Hello, namaste. Namaste, dear ladies and gentlemen, and warmly welcome on the interview with Dr. Kausthub Desikachar, calling to Chennai, India. Hello, Dr. Kausthub Desikachar.
Namaste. I am so happy that we are having this interview. Namaste.
Namaste, and my name is Katja Ujcic, calling today from sunny coast in Croatia. To the Chennai and Kausthub today. You will not believe we are growing and growing with this interview because we have also live audience here in my room. So, hello. Not just digital, but live. It's like real studio Kausthub, you see.
Excellent.
So,
I don't have the same circumstance here. I am in my empty room.
You are alone. Yes. I'm so very. I'm feeling sad for you. Yeah.
I don't know if I want to say I am alone, but what I would like to say is that there is no other human in this room.
Yeah. Oh, hey, hello together, Rani is saying. So, Rani, thank you very much for telling us and let us know that everything is okay. Technically, you can hear us as I can read and see us. Please do comment from where you are. If you are maybe the first time here, would be nice to know also, because I need to introduce Dr. Kausthub Desikachar and myself. Some of you already know us. So Dr. Kausthub Desikachar is a very famous yoga teacher. He's a yoga therapist, also a healer, an energy healer, and also a spiritual mentor for a lot of people. I'm also your student, Kausthub. So, and you are supporting all of us in our journey, in our hero's journey in our lives. So we are all very grateful for you. You must really have a lot of energy to support us like that, Kausthub. Yeah.
I hope so.
Yes.
I hope so. I am very grateful that I am not alone in that many of my ancestors behind me are supporting me to support all of you. So it's just, I'm a
Yeah.
medium. I'm not so great.
Oh my gosh. We need to address this, Kausthub. Of course, you're great. And of course, we are really grateful also to all your ancestors. And why actually we didn't have yesterday our regular interview on Saturdays that we do, because Kausthub, you had a ceremony of passing away your father to the another dimensions. And we are really deeply honored that that he was your father and you are teaching us also all his teachings. Yeah.
Yes, we had a very nice event for my father to remember him. It is a global prayer, and there were a lot of people from all over the world participated. So that's why we are doing the event today. Yes, thank you, friends, for being here today.
Exactly. So, and my name is Katja Ujcic. I am a yoga teacher also, a yoga therapist, an art therapist, and I'm helping people who are wants to experience life in a little bit different way, who wants to actually have their calling expressed. This is why art therapy is so nice, and yoga combining with yoga therapy, it really gives wonderful results. And today, Kausthub, we will start with, we will today have an interview about emotions, about the ABC of emotions, or even we go even deeper, how to disempower the emotions. I think it's going to be really very interesting because we are even if we are not aware consciously, we are really deeply, deeply into our emotions every day. So every our step, our gesture is filled with our emotions. And Kausthub, we are going to give a little bit of light on that part of our life. But first, of course, Kausthub, you're going to chant for us, yeah, to start this interview. Thank you.
Please. भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste. So, Kausthub, being human means actually have emotions, yeah? From emotions that are nice and peaceful and joyful, or emotions that are very, very destructive. And looks like if sometimes we just want to kill someone, or sometimes we want to give life for someone. It's a lot of things that we don't actually understand, and it's like a vortex somehow, in an energy vortex, energy movement in our subconscious, in our body. And looks like, or maybe it's a question, does this energy, let's say energy of anger, energy of sadness, energy of love, has a source, has its source? Because every energy has a source, yeah? So what about emotions? Does our emotions has a source?
Thank you, Katja, for this very complicated question. But the first thing I want to say is you started this conversation by saying that it's human to have emotion. I actually think it's not just human, it's emotion is part of every sentient being.
Yeah.
And plants and animals, they have emotion too, like my dog, my cat, they have emotions too. They express anger, they express sadness. I have seen animals, for example, like cows or elephants, for example, grieve when they have lost their child. So emotions are not really part of humans. We can't claim ownership of that, but it's part of every sentient being. And therein lies the answer. The emotions, they have their origins from the Purusha, from the consciousness. If we are conscious, we have emotions. If we have a consciousness, we have emotions. And that's why machines don't have emotions. The computer we are using now to communicate with each other does not have an emotion. The car that we drive does not have an emotion. The phone that we use does not have an emotion. The robot that we may one day invent to replace human beings will not have emotions. Whereas a consciousness is essential for emotions. And I say this because I have difficulty with the word emotion because it's an English word and I'm not a native English speaker, so I don't know full depth of that word. In my language, in Sanskrit, there are two words that are closely identified with it. One is called Vega, and the other is what is called as Bhava. And both are very fascinating, powerful words because they represent that it comes from a very deep place of feeling. And sometimes it's not always in our control. It's a spontaneous reaction, like the consciousness is expressing through that emotion for certain function. And always, I believe, is that the emotion is coming out for balancing our life. I think emotions are an extraordinary way to reach the state of equanimity, or what in modern science people call homeostasis, although that's only at a physiological dimension. Whereas the word called samana, balancing or harmony in Sanskrit language, is for other dimensions as well, because we're not always going to be at one level. It's kind of like an averaging out. Like, for example, a dog becomes angry and lets shows the anger, then it becomes calm. If it did not express that anger, it would not be calm. It would be in a disturbed state because it's holding on to that feeling of anger. So that's why it's called a vega, that it comes naturally, spontaneously. It's like an urge almost. So that vega, once expressed, maintains a balance in our human system. So no matter what the emotion is, expression of that in a very healthy manner is important. That's why I don't tell any of my students control your anger. I always say deal with your anger, because dealing with it is more important than controlling. Because if you control it, you're suppressing it. Any emotion, not just anger, like sadness, for example. People should not tell them, don't be sad. Of course, you have to be sad. Deal with the sadness. Express your sadness. Deal with the sadness. That is much more relevant and valuable than trying to control these emotions, because, sorry to say, my dear friends, you cannot control your emotions. It is a very deep feeling that is coming from the consciousness as a natural way to balance our system. So, in some way, if I have to use a modern medical terminology, it's almost like an autonomous function. It
Yeah.
happens without our will, without our knowledge.
Yeah. But so if the source is Purusha, that some emotions are still hurting us, they're coming through our human body, and we experience hurt like sadness or anger, so it's the source, it's Purusha. Then where is the trick? It's in some our subconscious, in collective for sure also, yeah, collective subconscious.
But even that is for a valid reason, because karma is always a great balancer and we are influenced by karma. So, for example, I love my partner very much, I love my father very much, I love my mother very much. So, I have that emotion of love, which is expansive, that occupies my consciousness while I am in relationship with that person. Now, life cannot be balanced if there was only that feeling. So when they pass on, like my father is dead 4 years ago, when he passed on, I had to feel the great grief of loss, so that compensate the expansive love that I shared for all these years. And it's a validation of that love that I had, that it's appropriate. So there is no way that it can only be something positive all the time. The need for the other kind of emotion, like grief or a feeling of sadness, is also so important to validate that love that I have for my father. So karma is always a great balancer, and we cannot have only one type of emotion, and every emotion has a very, very profound value. Uh, and essentially, it's for balancing. That's why you will see a dog, when you irritate it, it gets angry, but 10 minutes later, it's forgotten about it and it comes and loves you like before. The important thing is that we don't identify with emotions. We don't become attached to certain emotions, because it's a dynamic concept. It's not going to only remain in one way, it's going to move in one way or the other.
So every emotion has its function, let's say, and this is where we come at that point to ABC of emotion, let's say, yeah, because as far as I know, as far as I know, no one actually is teaching us the right, proper ABC of emotions. We just observe as children, yeah, and we get information from family, from society, from school. For example, girls are not angry, boys don't cry. And when a boy wants to cry for something, he needs to, let's say, suppress that sadness, that pain. And it might be that he can later on develop anger issues. So he will like not be sad, like that this is the basic emotions that he is feeling, but he is putting anger, which is more socially acceptable for a boy. He puts anger on. So let's discuss about first the true functions of, let's say, anger, of shame, maybe even, yeah. So every emotion, also shame, has a function. Anger has a function, because in nature everything has a function. So also that energy in us has a proper function, yeah.
Of course. For example, anger, in my view, is got certain functions, like to express a disagreement, or to put a boundary to somebody, or to validate that you may have a different point of view, which is different from what another person has a point of view. So anger has this concept, and it is strongly connected with the Manipuraka chakra, that is a chakra that is the starting point of putting appropriate boundaries between the self and others.
Yeah.
So, for example, if somebody is coming into my space, I get angry because it invades my space, and I say, hey, this is my space, you stay there. So that's how we originally supposed to have had anger, or some kind of dissent. For example, when you touch a dog inappropriately, it gets angry. When it's eating and you are irritating it because you want to play with it, it says no. Hey, there's a boundary. I'm now eating, you play with me later, no problem. But right now I'm eating, so don't mess with my time and my space. This is my boundary. So, in some ways, we have this kind of a function for anger, and that's why anger-based issues are extended into religious anger. Like, this is my boundary, my religion, that is your religion. We are fighting when you invade each other's space. Countries get angry with each other when borders are crossed. So there is anger because a boundary has been crossed. So we have these kind of issues that are allowing us to express this anger. Now, what is very important is we have to accept if somebody is angry, and accept that, okay, they are angry because their point of view is different. But what humanity has done as a problem is we want everybody to have the same view that we have. Otherwise, it doesn't seem to be right. We want to make everybody homogeneous. Yesterday, I was watching an interview, an old interview with Nelson Mandela when he was visiting America after he was the president of South Africa. And one of the questions an American reporter asked him was, hey, why are you so in favor of people like Gaddafi and Castro and other autocratic leaders or who are human rights violators and things like that. And Mandela's answer was very simple. He said, "Why do you assume that your enemies must be my enemies?"
Yeah.
And that's
Very
a
good.
brilliant situation. And that is exactly what is the problem with humanity, is that we don't want others to feel different from we are. That's why we don't accept somebody's anger. If somebody is angry with me, I have to accept it, because maybe what I did disturbed them. It doesn't mean I'm wrong. It means maybe what I did disturbed them, so I need to respect that boundary. It doesn't mean that I am guilty or I should be ashamed, because if my intention is not that, if my intention was to hurt them, then I should feel ashamed. But if that is not the case, and if somebody is angry, then I have to accept that they are angry, and that's okay. It doesn't automatically make me guilty. That's very, very important.
Yeah. So anger is healthy in its own rule, like own function. It's healthy. Yeah. Someone wants to, I don't know, kill us, let's say, or hurt us physically, and we say no. Of course, we fight back, and this comes from also from anger. Yeah, because anger is very strong. Yeah, very explosive.
Uh, and oh, normally anger is coming from attachment. Bhagavad Gita says, Sangat sanjayate kamaha, kamat krodho vijayate. From attachment comes desire, from desire comes anger.
Ah,
So I get used to somebody, like for example, let's say for example, now in the corona time I'm traveling less, and so I have a lot of time with my daughter, and I get used to being with my daughter on a regular basis. Now at one point of time, when she wants to leave and go to university or go with her friends, I get angry because what I'm used to is no more happening.
yeah,
I've been used to traveling, but I'm not traveling now. I get angry because I'm not getting what I'm used to, what I'm getting attached to. Now, the attachment
yeah,
may be conscious or unconscious,
yeah. Okay.
but there is some kind of attachment that is what leads to anger.
We were talking about guilt, dear friends, and then we were cut off because for sure Kausthub wanted to say us something very important. And what I was asking Kausthub was that the guilt that we have now these days as human beings here, it's really pervading our subconscious. But usually, or let's say in our natural state, the guilt does not have so much place in our subconscious. So what Kaustub is the true function of guilt, let's say, yeah? It's also a connection, I think, with chakra, yeah? Chakras.
Yeah. Uh, Guilt is a very, very, very fundamental concept, and guilt is connected to the second chakra. And it's a great teacher, because guilt is a very deep feeling of remorse, that we have done something wrong. It's a very private feeling. That's why it's part of the second chakra, because the first and the second chakra are more connected with our individual self. Shame is the third chakra that is connected with how society is perceiving. And for me, I frankly would prefer somebody having guilt than somebody having shame, because you can have shame but not feel guilt. And shame is not necessarily going to allow you to bring some change. Whereas guilt has got a very powerful feeling, because if you feel guilty, we are talking about our own feeling of guilt, we can use that to change.
Mhm.
However, we as a modern society, we are having an improper relationship with guilt, because we feel guilty for the things that we are not really responsible for, because society has programmed us to feel like a guilt, to be like a victim. Like I
Mhm.
know so many people who apologize for things that they don't really. are responsible for. And they do that more so because of shame, not because of guilt, because they don't want to feel rejected by people. So people have a confusion between what is guilt and what is shame. And often people are made to feel guilty so that they can be shamed. And that is how people are controlled by others. But the individual feeling of guilt is a very deep and personal one, and it's a great teacher. It will help us to improve, especially because we only have to feel guilty for what wrong we have done, not necessarily what other people are telling you as what you have done. And this is very important. There are so many people who will tell you that you have done this wrong and that wrong. That's just their perception. But deep in your heart, if you don't feel that, you will not have that guilt. But if you have that guilt deep in your heart, then there's something to be learned from that. So feeling guilty is not really a bad thing. But staying with the feeling of guilt for a long time, that is a bad thing, because then
Yes,
you learn from that teacher who is deeply intimate inside you. You not learn from that teacher.
yes, and that guilt is so, let's say, um, as far as I as a therapist can see that why guilt is so really, if it's too much, yeah, in present in our life, is so overburdening us because we are not even aware of it all the time, because we live in that from beginning, you know. So when we were little, we were not, I don't know, when we were dirty, you know, we were not okay, or we didn't eat okay, or we didn't play it okay, or we cried and it was not okay, yeah. And all that can result that we are in the state of guilt like all our life, which is
And that
not
is the
like.
problem, because that is the confusion between the guilt and the shame. We are made to feel ashamed, but we call it guilt, and it's not really a guilt, because guilt comes with some kind of a sense of judgment. Shame comes from the sense of acceptance.
Okay.
So we are somehow told that if you eat with a dirty way, you're not going to be accepted to sit in the table with us. So because we want to be accepted in the table, we want to acknowledge that that's shame being used, not guilt. Guilt is if you did something wrong. Like, for example, if you beat your brother, you feel guilty, you feel remorse because you did something wrong, which happens when you're growing up with brothers and sisters. You
Yes.
will fight. You feel guilty because you hurt your brother, you hurt your sister. You feel that as yourself. That is a very powerfully positive feeling to learn from that, and next time you will not beat your brother. Whereas when shame is happening, you kind of manipulate yourself into so-called acceptance, because some groups will accept you if you beat your brother, some groups will not accept you if you beat your brother. So that's shame, that's not guilt. Guilt is a very deep personal feeling.
As Maria Alejandra Sierra Hernandez High, she wrote, under religious social structures, sin has become a kind of judgmental. Is this a new emotion, she's saying?
I don't think sin is an emotion, it's just sin is an act.
Yeah.
What you associate with that sin, how what feeling you associate with that sin is the emotion. A sin is an act. You want to kill somebody, that's a sinful act. But how do you feel about that? Do you feel remorse? Then you have guilt. You feel guilty that, okay, you know what, I murdered somebody or I killed somebody. But if you don't feel that, you don't have that remorse. You've done that sin, but you don't feel that guilt. There are many, what do you call, people who are killing others or hurting others who don't feel remorse or guilt. But that doesn't mean that they have not done the sinful act. So sin is not the same as guilt or shame, but they're all in the same, let's say, field of operation. They can be, sometimes they need not be.
So what is your recommendation when we, let's say, feel guilt and we are aware of it? Yeah. Because this is also very, very difficult sometimes to be aware of guilt. And we, let's say, are aware of that, and then what to do? What is your recommendation?
Um, I think a very big problem for most people is to understand whether they really are the ones who are feeling guilty or whether they are feeling shamed. Now, if we are starting to think things like, oh, you know what, if I don't do this or because I did this, people will judge me this way, or before because I did this, people will judge me that way, then that's automatically a shame because it is already about acceptance. Whereas when we have done something and it has hurt somebody, we start to reflect, hey, you know what I did was hurting that person, and I don't feel good about it. What can I do to correct it? That is the feeling of guilt. And that is what I would recommend people to do, is to take that responsibility, personal responsibility, and to actually evaluate whether what they did is actually a mistake or not. Because every decision we make is our own individual decision, and obviously others will perceive it one way or another. Now we have to feel deep in our heart whether it's the best decision possible, or whether we have done it for some other, what you call, manipulative reasons or something like that. I conduct a program now online. I'm now doing my therapy training module online. Now, some people like it, some people don't like it, some people don't like the time, some people like the time. Uh, so, some people like the topics we have chosen, some people don't like the topics we've chosen. Now, I can't feel guilty about it because I have done my best under the circumstances. 20 people will expect 20 different things from me. So I cannot buy into all of their expectations and try to act like if I don't do that, then I will not have the social acceptance. My conscience is what is the best I can do. Whether other people think about it or one way or not, that's not. And we do that whether somebody likes it or not. We can't feel guilty about it. The only time we have to feel guilty is when intentionally we have done something that is not right.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And what about, also, what about shame? You spoke about shame also, but I think shame is really very deep because it actually, it's like sticks to our energy. It's very, I have a feeling it's very sticky. It's, yeah.
Shame is something that is used by society to manipulate and control people.
Yeah.
We don't need to worry about. I don't nowadays worry about shame as much as I worry about guilt, because guilt is a personal responsibility. Shame is a judgment put by others onto us, and if we don't buy it, we don't feel ashamed. I have been body shamed, for example, by many people. I have been shamed because of my race, because of my gender, because of different things. But I don't buy it because I'm not really trying to belong to any of these clubs so desperately, because I feel secure in myself. And
Mhm.
some others in the yoga field try to shame me for my stances that I take, or even sometimes create some lies because they don't feel very comfortable with what they're doing. So they want to push somebody down to go up. So they try to shame me in many ways. I don't buy it, and I don't want to buy it because I'm not so desperate to belong to that kind of a club, because I feel secure in myself. I feel clear about my dharma in this life, and that's all that matters. So you won't feel shame if you have got clarity. That's why it's
Exactly.
also connected with the Nabi chakra, because the navel is responsible for pitta, and pitta is responsible for clarity of mind. Sattva, it's responsible for intelligence and clarity. So if that is in balance, if your Nabi chakra is in balance, you will not really feel shame, because you know that you don't care if you belong to a club or not, because 100 people will have 100 different expectations from you. My mother wants something from me. My daughter wants something from me. My partner wants something from me. My friends want something from me. My students want something from me. I'm not that super person that I can satisfy all of these people. What I can do is what I can do best, not what they want me to do. I will always disappoint them. So I don't have to feel ashamed about the fact that I'm not able to fulfill their expectation, which is not possible for me. But what I should feel guilty about if I am
Mm-hmm.
not doing my best. If I
Yeah,
am not doing my
but
best,
it's
we should do.
yeah, but it's like it's a long way, Kausthub. You made a long way to come to that conclusion. You know, you need to be really true to yourself, confidence in yourself, and this is where let's say our jump or our effort or our self-awareness is. Yeah, I am good at that. I'm self-confident at that, and I don't listen to other people who are shaming me and telling me you are like that and like that. Yeah, but to come to that point, all of us we did have to uh, um, have a long journey. Nevertheless, it's a journey of knowing ourselves and our true potentials, and to own our true potentials in the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that in a way this belong to certain people, and let's please certain people comes just from the beginning of the earth, the beginning of the humanity, and actually it's putting down our true potential and our own truth. So what can we do to face that shame and say, okay, I am who I am, and this is what you see, and take it or leave it. Let's say, yeah.
I think it's very simple. Shame is concerning the ego, and
Okay.
guilt
Okay.
is more about your personal self. So, which is not the ego. So, the moment you move, you start to step back from the ego and you start to wonder, what the hell have I got to lose? Then
Yeah.
you're moving away from shame. Because shame is normally about a social acceptance. You are made to feel ashamed of this. You are made to feel ashamed of that. You are made to feel ashamed of this. It's used like a punishment.
Yeah.
But if you don't feel like you need anything to be punished about, why you have to worry about it? So that's where it's a movement away from the ego and going more to our fundamental self. And that is where the guilt is so much more powerful as a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Ego, pride, etc., those are the things that determine shame. They
Mm-hmm.
don't determine guilty. They don't determine feeling guilt about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is a very simple
Mm-hmm.
concept. That's all. You know.
So yeah, great. So as there is a question from Shalaja.
You have to feel guilty for
I'm
mispronouncing.
sorry. Is it right or not?
Shailaja.
I'm so sorry. Shailaja Menon, hello, how are you? I'm so sorry. Yeah, but I don't
Shaila.
feel guilty or shame.
Shila means a mountain. So
Okay.
Ja means to be born. Shailaja means the one who is born in the mountain.
Oh my gosh, great.
I don't think she is born in the mountain, but it's the name of goddess Parvati who was
Wow.
born in the mountain. That's why she's also called Parvati because Parvat means a mountain. Parvati means the mountain's daughter. So what's the question?
In Slovenian, she would be Planinka, something like that. Yeah.
Planinka.
Planinka, yeah. Nice, huh? Planinka Menon. Hi. So she's asking, are they good and bad emotions? I am putting on this question also my own question. So it's like if we have good and bad emotions, or as you said before, that emotions are actually guiding us in a way that we feel like good and bad, uh, and we are developing our own subconscious, and we are becoming better and better. When the society comes and address this emotion in not proper way, yeah, for example, you are shameful because you are not beautiful and skinny and you don't have, let's say, blonde hair, yeah, then they are giving us the wrong guidance, yeah. Or you are woman and you are not man, be shameful or be guilty because you said this and that. The society is actually very tricky and manipulative, guiding all of the humans into wrong direction.
Yeah, that's why I said the concept of shame is always about punishment, and punishment to control or manipulate society to the way they want to control it. And That's not necessarily the real function of the original emotions. Um, uh, my feeling about the question whether there are good or bad emotions is, I don't feel there is any emotion that is good or bad or even positive or negative. I look at it as as an energy. There are expansive emotions and there are contracting emotions. Now,
Okay.
feeling like love, for like compassion, like friendliness, care, all these are expansive emotions, because when you love somebody, it's not only that they expand, you also expand. It's like the light, you're lighting a lamp with another lamp, both lamps have light. So it's only expanding the light. It's not whether it's positive or negative. So the
Okay.
energy will expand when you are sharing an emotion like love or emotion like compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when there is emotions like anger or let's say, for example, uh, fear, etc., the emotions, the energy gets contracted. And now we are living in, that's why the world where negative emotions or so-called negative emotions or contractive energy emotions are dominated. That's why we are fear-based
Yes.
society, we are guilt-based society, we are shame-based society, we are anger-based society. And when you look around, you see how many people have energy disorders. They have burnout, they have chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. All these disorders are coming on a social. That's a bigger pandemic than the coronavirus, but nobody talks about it.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
because we are dominated and we have become somehow a machine of these kind of contracting emotions, because when we have less energy, it's easy to control us and win over us because we become weak. Whereas when we have more energy, nobody can win over us, because more energy means more strength. And that is why the so called controllers that you talked about do not want us to feel positive. You look at the television, there's mostly negative news. You look at most of the posts on Facebook or any social interaction, most of them is about negative news. So that we start to feel more and more constricted and not expansive. So it's easy for us to be controlled. And that is why I call them not good or bad emotions, but more like
Mm-hmm.
expanded or contracted emotions.
Yeah, and it looks like, as you said, that fear is now all over, also because of the pandemic. Yeah, that it's all the collective subconscious were activated with a lot of fear. So we didn't even speak about the fear yet, Kausthub. So maybe just a few words about the fear. What is the vital function, the real function of fear? Like from ancient times, you know, we were, if a tiger jumped in front of us, the fear was the, let's say, the energy that drives us, that we survive. But now looks like we are all the time also in fear, fear about the future, about the money, about the health now. Yeah.
So fear comes from the sense of loss. We don't want to lose something
Yeah.
very fundamentally, like, for example, our life. And that is why we have fear. That's why in the ancient times, when a bear would attack us, we would have fear and run because we are afraid we will lose our life. That fear is associated with the Mooladhara chakra, very, very fundamental.
Yes.
And I would say that it is the basis of almost all other feelings or emotions because it is the most fundamental feeling that we have. It's the software that is brought in by the consciousness for survival. That's the first basic instinct. Even if every other instinct is not there, survival is the most basic instinct that we will have. So that's where fear comes in. But what we have done today is we have identified this concept called life with many, many artificial things like status, like economy, or like a lifestyle, or whatever, that we feel that we are going to suffer if we lose that. Like, I don't know if you have heard about it, but there is news now in the US now that this application called TikTok is going to be banned by the American president, the American government.
Yeah.
So I just saw some videos where some so-called TikTok stars are crying on the internet that they are going to lose their whole life, that they have nothing apart from TikTok. So they are so afraid that they are going to lose everything. And that is what we have made the fear about things that are so artificial, that are not really real. They still have got their life. They still have probably their family. They still have probably their friends. But somehow they are losing an application that gave them some joy or that gave them some revenue in some cases. But they feel that they are losing their life. And that is the problem with fear. We have somehow outsourced this concept of life into things that are not really fundamentally life. That is the problem. But fear is a very, very, very deep feeling. It is meant for survival, and it is only meant to be activated when we are confronted with a survival threat. But now, because we don't trust anybody, we are afraid of every moment. Because the opposite of fear, the so-called the expansive emotion of the Mooladhara chakra, is faith. The contractive energy of the Mooladhara chakra is fear. So fear and faith are basically connected to the Mooladhara chakra. And we don't trust anybody, we don't trust anything, and therefore we have fear about almost everything. And this corona, we are even afraid of each other. Because we
Exactly.
don't want to touch each other, we don't want to be with each other. It's just created a huge pandemic of emotions rather than just a physiological disease.
Yes, and it can really affect us on all the society and all the humanity also in the future. Yeah? Because if this will still go on, it can really affect us like very, very anxious and depressed people. Yeah. I can see this in young people now in my clients, like in puberty, young girls and boys. They're in young people. They are very, very anxious and they have social anxiety. So I'm wondering what will be later on in their adult life. Yeah.
And
So
it's becoming more and more worse because we are now more and more into the Vata era, and Vata is controlling fear. So we will have more and more fear before it gets better.
oh my gosh, yeah. So let's answer the question. Dipankar, hi. Is it right, Kausthub?
Dipankar.
Dipankar, this was a good pronunciation then. Is shame a consequence of guilt? are shame and remorse very similar. So yeah, Dipankar is actually the question is, as I can maybe translate a little bit, is these feelings, they are not like in little cubes, but they can also maybe be fluid. Yeah.
I'm not so good an English speaker to know the difference between shame and remorse, but I would say that they are more or less in the same basket of
But yeah, like that.
feelings.
Of pain.
And I don't think shame is always a consequence of guilt, because I told you just earlier, you don't need to feel guilty to feel shame.
Yeah.
You may feel ashamed, but you don't necessarily feel guilty. I know a lot of people who have body shame issue where they don't like their body, but they don't necessarily feel guilty for their lifestyle choices.
Yeah.
And unless guilt comes, the change of lifestyle will not happen. Shame is not enough to change lifestyle. The guilt feeling has to come in order for us to change lifestyle.
Yes, and this is the actually the empowerment of the true feelings. Yeah. So
And
with this,
that's why I said there is no good or bad feelings. Everyone has a role.
yeah. So with this empowered, let's say the faked address emotions, and we empower guilt in its own function to be as some sort of catapult for our transformation.
Yeah.
Is this fantastic conclusion that we have
It's,
today?
it's one part of this. And another part of the problem we have in modern era is what I call the power of emotive resonance.
Wow.
Yeah. So, for example, um, let's say that I have been bullied in school, okay? And I meet you, and we are having coffee, and we are just talking about something. And suddenly I remember and I share with you that I have been bullied in school and I was feeling terrible and all that. Now, you have also been bullied in school. So you have that feeling, that what you call impression. Now, you will not even verify whether I am telling the truth or not. You will feel hatred to the people who bullied me, even though you've never met them, you have never seen them. You will start to feel that feeling just because you and I have what is called an emotive resonance. And that is
Yeah.
what is taking over the world now. And sometimes this is also being used to manipulate people's fears and anger and other things, because some people just people many people know today that there is a lot of domestic violence or abuse of different kinds that have happened, and people just want to like say, oh, this person abused me, or this person abused me, or this, and then there is this emotive resonance, and a whole bunch of people get angry and violent, and that is very, very dangerous. On the positive side, the emotive resonance can also be with the feeling of love and affection and other things. Like, for example, yesterday I told you was my father's passing anniversary, and my mother and myself, we've been talking some things about wonderful experiences we had with my father. And then this morning I got an email from one of my father's students who shared a very beautiful article that she wrote about my father. And the moment you read it, there is that emotive resonance positively, even though it's not my experiences, it's her experiences with my father. So many more positive experiences started to come, and the joy just expanded. So the emotive resonance can be also both expansive and contractive. And unfortunately, now we are somehow controlled by a lot of the contractive feelings of anger, of resentment, of hatred, and other things. And that is why we are going down in energy. We are not expanding. Because when the energy goes down, it's a destructive form. When energy goes expansive, it's a constructive form. So, in the same way, we are committing a social suicide with these negative contracted emotions now,
Yes.
and the power of emotive resonance. Because when these things start to grow, the negativity also grows, and sometimes it's so difficult to see light when there is so much darkness. And that is
Exactly.
what our society is right now trapped in, because people don't trust the media, people don't trust the government, people don't trust each other. If you ask somebody who do you trust or what do you trust, they really take a long time to think and answer who or what they trust. If you ask them who don't you trust, the list is very quick and very long, very soon.
Exactly. But mostly ourselves is we should know, yeah. So and let's take the final question um, about how can we, let's say, at least a little bit help ourselves, or as a therapist help other people, is how to release these emotions, how to express emotions, because as you said in the beginning, the dog can be angry, he or she express it himself or herself, but people are very rigid. We want to be not just we are control over the family, let's say, or society mostly, yeah, because this comes to family, but then we are managing to control ourselves, which is the perfect program, yeah. So we are so rigid, me as an art therapist, and in art therapy we really need to express our feelings, our inner world, which is so healing in the end, that we are really connected to our emotion, the true emotions. So but we need to, let's say, break this rigidity first. So how to do that, how to have a little bit, let's say, self-healing in that area, in this emotion area.
Well, there's different approaches, like you have very nicely said. Um, my experience is that the only way to resolve all these issues is expressing the emotions one way or the other. So if you have some kind of emotion like sadness, feel sad, it's nothing to be ashamed of. If you are angry, feel angry, there's nothing to be ashamed of. If you are happy, feel happy, there's nothing to be ashamed of. And in certain moments, you need to express them. For example, if you can't express in a non-violent way, like anger, for example, like you were saying, make some artwork, like splash paint with all your anger, or write some letter to that person who you are angry with. Don't give them, but you just
Yeah,
write it, and then you have expressed it, and then you throw it away into
exactly.
nature. Or I always find this very helpful, and I'm very happy that I play this role for many of my students, is to be a safe container, to find a safe container where you can express without judgment. And many students express their anger or frustration or different emotions to me so that I can hold them without any judgment. So it has come out of their system. Now, I don't need to own this. I just listen and I just let it go. The same way the person has done, they've expressed it to me and they let it go. And I used to do the same with my father, and now I do it with my mother and some other very close people with whom I feel that I can express without feeling judged or without feeling ashamed. That's the more important thing. So I express all kinds of feelings. So even recently, when, as I said, in the last days, it's been close to my father's passing. I've been very emotional, and I've had tears in my eyes thinking about my father. I cry with my mother. It's not. It's. I don't feel ashamed about it because it's a very fundamental feeling I have, and I don't want to not express that feeling and suppress it. So my experience has taught me that the best way to deal with it is express it in an appropriate way that is non-violent. And so we try to do some kind of expression like that. It's like I've even told some students, like if you're angry, go run around your house for 3 or 4 times so that that energy gets expressed. So you're not beating anybody or punching anybody or things like that. So find a way. I have seen my mother when she's sometimes angry, she's doing gardening where she's digging the earth. So she's putting all that energy to dig the earth, and that energy gets expressed. She's not killing anybody or beating anybody, but she is doing something with that energy. So my feeling is always to express these emotions and deal with it and not identify with it. You are not your anger, you are not your sadness, you are not your happiness, you are not your fear. You are beyond that. That's why we must not identify with that.
Right. So, Kaustubh, again, we are more than 1 hour. Okay, we had a little technical interference, but nevertheless, again, these interviews are longer and longer, but we will need to finish slowly. We still have some questions that we will answer in the next interview, my dear listeners. So, which will be in 2 weeks. Kaustubh, you are still inside in quarantine, as far as I know. Yes.
I cannot go anywhere else.
Yeah. So we will meet you all in 2 weeks, dear friends. But at the end, maybe Kaustubh, we can scream out the anger, not with the chant, but with screaming. This is also very good if you scream. If you scream as if you are angry, not at someone, but you can scream on your couch or on your pillow. It's very, very helpful. So, my dear friends, thank you very much for being with us on this lovely Sunday. Thank you, Dr. Kausthub Desikachar. We are going to talk about emotions even more because, as we can see, there is something more. There is a deeper philosophy and deeper knowledge about the emotions. Thank you very much, all. We love you all because, as we were reading here in the comments, we love you and you love us. This is great. So this is good emotion, yeah, Kaustubh. So
It's at least expansive.
expensive emotions we have, yes, on this interview, exactly. And it's enlightening interview. You see, Kaustubh, we are really wow, yes.
We talked about a lot of things, but one of the most expansive emotions is gratitude, and that is what is lacking in a very large population today. We are not grateful for what we have, and gratitude is one of the most positive, expansive emotions.
Exactly, group, very good. So we are ending with this emotion. I'm very grateful for this interview. Very grateful for Kaustubh Desikachar. Very grateful for technical stuff to to that we finish this interview. Thank you, internet, and thank you, headphones, and thank you very much, guys. We are now we will listen now to Dr. Kaustubh Desikachar's chant, and warmly welcome in 2 weeks.
सर्वभूतस्थमेकन्नारायणम् कारणरूपमकारपरब्रह्मोम् एतद् अथर्व शिरो योधीते प्रातरधीयानो रात्रिकृतं पापन्नाशयति सायमधीयानो देवसकृतं पापन्नाशयति माध्यन्दिनमादित्याभिमुखो धीयान पञ्चपातकोपपातकात् प्रमुच्यते सर्ववेदपारायणपुण्यल्लभते नारायणसायुज्यमवाप्नोति श्रीमन्नारायणसायुज्यमवाप्नोति या एवं वेदा इत्युपनिषत् हरिः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः Namaste.
Namaste.